Hello everyone, here are my 25 tips for grounded, and my very first one is about the first main weapon that you should get, and it's the Spider Fang Dagger. So the reason is, it's not that hard to get if you do this right. I already have a tutorial on it, so you can check out my how to go and kill wolf spiders tutorial. All you need to go and do is go to the tree, walk inside, and you just have to go and kill these wolf spiders. I'll try it out real quick. I like to use axes. So that is it. So just make sure that you set your spawn outside, and then all you have to do is just kill these guys. It might take a bit, as you know, but this is the best weapon for early game. It's easy to get. Highly recommend getting it. This is super important. Okay, so now my second tip, you can do this really anywhere. It's just always make sure that you have supplies for beds. That's my second tip. And then my third tip is to make beds everywhere. So all you need for a bed is 2 sprigs and 3 clovers. I could probably make one in like 5 seconds here. You just want to have them all over the place so that no matter where you are, let's say that you died and you don't have anything, you can still set your spawn point somewhere. Super important because otherwise you'll spend way too much time like running around. So make sure you do that. Now for the fourth tip. So the fourth tip is just don't skip out on labs, because labs like the oak lab, especially the oak lab, it gives you a ton of stuff. It gives you super important things like burgle. Then you have the hedge lab, which lets you get important stuff. And whenever you do labs, you usually will get a few milk molars along with a lot of just other supplies. So make sure that you do that. It's super important. Only skip out on the lab if you don't have the stuff, but most of the time you do. So my fifth tip kind of goes along with the wolf spiders. It's just to practice your perfect blocks. So the reason for this is, no matter what you're fighting, if you take too much damage, then you're going to die. No matter what you're doing. So just don't take damage. Just always perfect block. Like this. I can fight a wolf spider with anything I want now, just because I practiced this enough. And even if you do make some mistakes, usually your armor or health food can just cover it up. See, I already have Parry Master. I've only killed one of these guys. So make sure that you practice that. Don't rely too much on your armor. Armor does help, but don't rely on it. Okay, so now for the sixth tip, it's going to be about milk molars. So right now I'm just in the oak lab. I'm under there. So if you follow the path that I did, that's the starting room I was in. Here, Burgle. Take a right when you reach Burgle. And then you go over to here to your ASL terminal. You can use it. I'm in design mode, spectator mode. So I'll go to play mode for this. It allows you to use it. And if you don't have it unlocked, then it won't show it. So there's Science Shop where you can buy a lot of things. And then in this section right here, there's the milk molar category. And in here, there's things like more health, more stamina, more like hunger or something like that, bigger thirst bar, and more mutation slots. And the only important one, in my opinion, is the mutation slots and the stamina. Because like I said, if you practice perfect blocking, health doesn't really matter. So make sure that you go and get as many mutation slots as you can, because that allows you to go and just deal extra damage or be like immune to poison, and it's really useful. Now on to my next tip. Okay, so now for this tip, it's just always have health foods on you. So some examples of health foods are like Workers' Comp, Hedge Lord, things like this. Granola bars, these are rare and you can't craft them, but they are one of the best like foods early game, and most of the labs have them. So research stations and labs. So this is just a crazy food. It's good for early and late game. Bandages also help. They're not as good as the granola bars, but they do help, and they're craftable, which is good. Any food does just give you health, like not jerky, roast. Obviously not, like raw food. So don't eat this. But I would just recommend either having smoothies on you or something like a granola bar or bandage at all times. And another quick food tip is that mushrooms are also very good because you can kind of spam eat them. So like if you have them in your second slot, you can just spam your second slot key over and over, and instantly, like, it just basically gives you full hunger instantly. So mushrooms, they're very easy to find as well. You can just sort of walk around and get 20 of them. So if you do see mushrooms, you should just go and get them because it's a really easy food source. Even though they don't give you much hunger per mushroom, it is still they're good in quantity. So my next tip is about your map. So this is the map, and you should always be using this thing, okay? So especially in multiplayer, so you can see where people are. But you can also just place waypoints, which are really useful for like marking something. So like let's say that you saw something here, then you could just go and mark it with a waypoint. And if you're outside your map, you can still see it. So it's super useful. If you, I don't know, find the Black Widow, I think it's like around here, then you can just mark it and leave it be. And this is just really useful. It lets you not have to use any of those interactive maps or anything. So highly recommend using your map. If you do want to learn about where the black widows are, wolf spiders, I do have some videos on those as well. So if you don't find them yourself, you can just watch that. And another tip that kind of goes along with this is when you're marking stuff in the hedge, there's going to be a big spider cave. I think it's around here. This is where the brood mother lives, and you should really try to go and kill the brood mother. So her recipe, you can find that on a tutorial, but all you have to do is really summon her. She's, I'd say, harder than a wolf spider, but easier than a black widow, and you should have some decent gear for this fight, because she is pretty strong, but not that strong. So make sure that you defeat her a few times. Her armor and weapons are really useful, and if you get her stuff, then it's really easy to fight any black widows that you want. So make sure that you get her stuff as soon as you can. Okay, so now I'm in the haze, and this is just a real quick tip. So after you do the hedge and oak lab, the next lab you're going to want to go to as soon as you can is the haze lab. This lab is the harder one. I'd say it goes black ant, hardest, and then this one. But you should still get this one done a bit first, just because you can go and get some crazy things like the cooking station. And the cooking station, I'll put an image of it up on screen. It just allows you to cook the broodmother BLT or the summon for the broodmother. So if you want to go and get that crazy stuff and be able to defeat black widows, you are going to have to go and do this lab. It is somewhat hard. It's not very long. I'll go into spectator, I guess, to show you. It looks kind of big. The only real hard part is this big room, because there's usually a lot of enemies that just haven't spawned in yet, I guess. But that's really the only hard part. As long as you have a gas mask on you, you should be fine. And that does lead me to my next tip. So the next tip that I have for everyone is to go and level up your tools as soon as you can, okay? So that includes killing stink bugs. And there are the locations of stink bugs, the ones, at least the ones that I go to, I will show you in a second. The locations of stink bugs, there's some next to the oak tree, so like right around here-ish. There should be like a twig, you just go down the twig, there should be some. And on the other side of the pond, right around here-ish, there's usually going to be 2. So those are the locations I go. And by killing them, you can usually go and get gas masks, and you can get an upgraded hammer, and the upgraded hammer will let you get milk molars, which lets you get more mutation slots, which just lets you become really strong. But another thing you can do is when you're fighting the stink bugs, don't go in melee until you have a gas mask, because you'll just take a ton of damage from their main attack, which is like poison. So make sure that you use a bow for this. It should be pretty simple. Just find a high vantage point and use a bow to get rid of all the stink bugs. Okay, my next tip is to just always be collecting upgrade materials. So my example is in the sandbox. It will surely inconvenience you and you may die a bit, but you should always be going into these antlion holes, for example, because inside they usually have like things like salt and like supreme quartzite, supreme marble, I think this is. Yep. And just in super useful upgrade materials, and if you skip them, you're going to regret it later. I can guarantee that. Happened to me a ton. It was super annoying. Sturdy marble. And these things are everywhere, like especially in like ant dens and labs. You can find a ton of this stuff. So just make sure that you get it, because upgrading your weapons is super useful. It's super strong. It just really makes you a lot stronger. So make sure that you get as many upgrade materials as you can, even if it inconveniences you. And if you can't, make sure that you mark it on the map, like I said previously. Okay, so now for my next tip, it's make sure that you go and collect a few lab chips. Because if you turn them in instantly, once you turn in one lab chip, other than like finishing the oak lab, it will summon mosquitoes. So I'm currently over here. Normally there are mosquitoes here. I haven't done any labs, so there aren't. You would know if you've done some labs that you would just walk by here and all of a sudden you would just be getting shot by like 20 different mosquitoes. And you would start your vengeful wrath for mosquitoes, because they're super annoying, okay? Even if you haven't encountered them, trust me, you do not want to fight them. And they're basically everywhere. Like, they would spawn over here once you've done a lab, or by that log. There's a pond over there by the hedge, everywhere in the upper yard, by the castle, Modor Castle. So make sure that you finish 1 or 2 labs, so like you get the hedge lab chip and the haze lab chip before turning them in, just so that you can spend less time with the mosquitoes flying around in your world. Okay, so now my next tip is about milk molars. So pretty self-explanatory, but always mark and get milk molars. Like, no matter what, it's kind of like with the upgrade materials. These are super important, and when I say that, I mean it's super important. So make sure that you get as many milk molars as you can. So there's some over there. I just put some in the rock. No matter where they are, even if they're, I don't know, 2 miles deep in this water, you should get them. And if you can't, then you should mark them. So there are some in the pond down here. They're really everywhere. They're in the tree lab. They're in every lab. There's some by the castle. I have tons in the upper yard, under the shed. They're basically everywhere. If you can't find them, then you can just use an interactive map or look up a tutorial on it. That is my tip. Okay, so my next tip is just about lighting. So currently, I'm going to the anthill, and as you can see, it looks like you can see things. But once you get about like around this far in, yeah, as you can see, like suddenly you go from seeing everything to straight black. Like it's terrible. So just make sure that you always either have your brightness up. I can just do that with a ghost gnat, or have a torch on you. It doesn't matter what torch, just something so that you can see. So if you have your brightness up, then you can usually just be able to see like this. If you don't have it up, make sure that you have a torch, because you don't want to walk in here without any gear. And since you can't see, you just get jumped by ants. I don't think anyone's ever wanted to get jumped by ants. So yeah, just make sure that that never happens to you by having torches and your brightness up. Another quick side tip is that anthills are 100% worth it. Make sure that whenever you find an anthill, there's fire ant, black ant. The black ant one is kind of hard to get to, but especially like the red ant because of how easy it is. Make sure that you always go through them, because as you can see, there is a ton of stuff down here. Like there's just upgrade materials. There's these blobs. There's like milk mullers. I think there's like one or two in here. There's also some chips that you need for burgle. So just make sure that you always explore these. They're super useful. There's a light. I don't know why there's light here, but hey, there's light. And yeah, just make sure that you always explore these. There's tons of useful things. Kind of follows along with all the other tips. And yeah, so that is it for this tip. So my next tip is just all about the peeping feature in this game, okay? So this is the peeping. You just press X on your keyboard. It's like this. It lets you get your peeping goggles on. And you just always want to peep things. So there is a bee flying around. It's kind of annoying. But like, for example, this bombardier beetle, you may not know its name, you may not know its weaknesses, but if you press E and peep it, then now you know what it's called. And on the left side of the screen, you can see the weaknesses. Hey, stop. Of chopping and fresh. Stop moving. What? And resistance is to bumping. And weakness is its back. So now when fighting these guys, you just know that you should always be using an axe on its back. And you shouldn't be using your hammer if you are a person that uses hammer for fighting. So it's just really useful. Some enemies, though, have literally no weaknesses, and they are resistant to everything. Like some bosses, for example. You cannot hit me from I'm too high. So just make sure that you peep all the animals so that you just know what weapons types. Sometimes it's like weaknesses to fresh, which means that something like a mint mace would do really good, or maybe resistance to salty, which means that you shouldn't be using the salt morning star. Just things like that. Really useful to just know some weaknesses to help you fight harder enemies like black widows. So that is it for this video. I hope that this has helped you. I have some other tutorials on my channel if you want to check them out. And hope they liked the video. Have a good day.